Hello, a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be watching us. This is your favorite program, King Point Podcast. With me today is Honorable Sekou Sao, the most outspoken and the guy who is definitely shaking the nation when it comes to our political discourse. Without much ado, I will allow Sekou to greet our listeners before my co-host, Dr. Omar Malmo Sambu, will join us in the program. Sekou, Bismillah King Point Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on your platform, Joe. It's a great honor, and I would like to first thank you for hosting and for you know bringing awareness and sensitization to your audience. Yeah, you guys are doing a phenomenal job. My name is Nico Saha, the Black Bureau President of PPP, People Progressive Party. Uh, Originally from Sokotra, my parents are from Peru, and then they migrated to Sokotra in the 70s. And, now, I'm a son of the soil. I grew up in the midst of, struggle, pain, and resilience, but one thing that I noticed, even with all the struggle, Gambians still have hope, we still smile. We call it, literally still call it smiling coast for a reason. So, but, growing up between struggle and resilience is actually shaped my, my view of how, things needs to be. I started to research, I started to want more for myself, read, uh, making sure education is, top priority. And that opened a lot of doors for me, including, getting a scholarship, coming to the US for studies, joining the US Army, working in corporate America, coming back, building a company, you know, from building a startup from scratch, coming back home. So, the way I grew up actually shaped how, I wanted, you know, like the vision I had for myself, for my surrounding, for Gambia, for Africa.
That's phenomenal. Sekou, I will just drag you back a little bit. You said you have started your education in the Gambia, and then fast forward, you moved to the United States. Can you take us through about the transition? How does it come about?
Yes. So, I grew up I started in the Gambia. My dad was a businessman. He traveled to multiple, African countries. He's never been to school, but he was just a businessman. But he was very exposed. He's been to different African countries, like Congo, Angola, Nigeria, and then coming back to Gambia. So at a very young age, I did see the world at a very young age because I was traveling. I traveled with my dad, going to these different countries. Congo is a French-speaking country. Angola is like Portuguese. And so I moved around a lot, different countries. And then we came back, to the Gambia to was already in high school. So I completed my grade 10 and 12 in the Gambia. Uh, and then after school, I did enroll UTP for one semester. And then after, I believe 6 months in between, I had that scholarship to go to the US. Yeah. So, at a young age, I was very exposed. I've seen other cultures and coming back home, uh, you know, it's Sukuta. So it was really an eye opener for me. Uh, the different challenges in different communities, it actually shaped, how I see the world. And then, just having that exposure, coming back home, you feel like, wow, Gambia still needs a lot of work to do. So that actually inspired me. I think for me, that's where I actually got my Pan African roots. So I wanted more for not just Gambia, but for Africa. We Africans needs to. It should be our duty to be proud of Africa. Uh, we should show a good image for other people so that Africa can be respected. Africa, because right now Africa as a continent we still got so much work to do, but we all have to play our role. So that upbringing just kind of like shaped me, gave me a whole different mindset.
Brilliant. Just to take you a little bit forward, when you were in the United States for the past, how many years have you spent in America? And in between, have you ever had a chance to visit the Gambia or to visit your family during that time?
Yes, I was in the United States for about 12 years. But even during that 12-year period, I've been visiting, home for holiday for 2 weeks, go back, see my family. And then, I came back home permanently in 5 years ago. And I've been here, I spend 95% of my time in Gambia. Even when I travel, vacation, I'm only out for like a week, the maximum 2 weeks. But I spent, 95% of my time in Gambia in the past 5 years. And then when I came home, I wanted to do more, and I just didn't sit on the sidelines. I was looking at different ways I could also create and make an impact socioeconomically, by looking at different ways, I could also create jobs, looking at different ways I can add value to the community that I come from, So when I came, I was just brainstorming on different ideas, so that led me to, the investments that I made. uh, You know,
How is the business? How is the business going? Like,
one of the flagship businesses my wife and I created is called Mirror. We have close to 30 employees working there. It is going well. There are challenges, don't get me wrong. Having, businesses in Africa is never easy, especially Gambia. We still lack amenities and good infrastructure. So you just have to find different ways to overcome those challenges. Even in training, since we opened Mirror, we've invested over $7 million in, training our staff, customer service, refining their skill sets, making sure they're fully capable. So, it's a lot of investment. This is, just in training, we're spending over 7 million. Imagine how much it would take to actually set up a business. But I love what I do, and
yeah,
this is what every Gambian should do. I feel like one thing I would say: if you work hard, you make your money. You don't owe nothing to nobody, right? But as a good citizen, you don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
exactly.
So we all should play a role. We all do it in different ways. Like you're doing it right now in the media. You're bringing awareness to very sensitive topics like this, especially with the political landscape in Gambia. So you're doing a service for your country. We all do it in different ways, shape, or form. But no matter what we do, even if we have disagreements, we can do it respectfully. We can there are different ways to have dialogue without having to insult or scream each other.
Yeah,
So we're just doing things differently, but it requires a lot of maturity and patience. That's all.
definitely, definitely. So that is Malmo dog. Someone not getting at it.
For whether we get out in but good afternoon to you, Mr. Saho.
Yes. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you. So good to have you here.
Likewise.
Right.
All right, Doc. We've just started the program, I think, a couple of minutes ago, and then we've started talking about his transition from the United States back to the Gambia, and having the notion to establish his own business, and subsequently, he felt that, come on, I have to do this together. So, Doc, um, um, Honorable Sao, I just want to ask you this question before I allow Doc to ask his first question.
Sure.
Politics in the Gambia was very, very toxic. Being in the United States, hearing what has been happening in the Gambia, and whatnot. When you get to the Gambia, you started your business. What has kicked in? What really motivates you to venture into the politics?
Um, it, it's not one dramatic event that changed my mind. It's a sequence, series of events, talking to everyday people, the challenges they face. You see the women struggling. I'm a type of person, I have people that work for me, butlers, I have maids, but take my time to go to the market myself. For instance, you find me going to Agopo, going to buy sheep. I go there, I talk to the youth, the boys that are there butchering, and understanding their challenges. I do that on purpose. Sometimes I go to Tanje Fish Market myself to buy fish, and I'm looking at the environment, how unhygienic, how the women struggle, and they don't even have good refrigerators, to keep their fish. And most of the time, with all that hard work, they actually operate at losses, because sometimes, there's scarcity of ice, and then all that, investments they made buying the fish from the suppliers, it actually goes to waste. So, it's just sad when you see that happening, in a small country like Gambia. It's sickening. So I feel like we shouldn't sit on the sidelines, and then, talking to like-minded people, they also came back 5 years ago. She's been investing, she did a lot of philanthropic work. and then we kind of share the same ideas, exchange ideas. Some of the challenges that she's facing is the same that I'm facing as well, just being in the Gambia. And so due to all those reasons and frustrations, we decided to also join politics and do politics differently, listen to the people more, come up with feasible solutions that are implementable. So we don't want to sit on the sidelines and just make mistakes. We want to hear from the Gambian people. We also, we've been reaching out to other political leaders, to see, how best we can transform the government. We want the Gambia that works for all, not just for 5% or 10%. We need to have that trickle down effect where the economy, expansion of the economy is reaching, those people in poverty, and then we can lift them to a middle class. Because right now in Gambia, we don't have a middle class. So it's either it's either you the elite, you're right there, poverty. There's no middle class. So that's what needs to change. Gambia needs a thriving middle class.
Yeah, I mean, being in the Gambia, especially somebody who came from the United States, looking at the governance level, the way their communities are well managed, and get to the Gambia, you realize that, damn, what's going on here? Especially Baro, like what Baro said last time, akala moto to that malmola sade do and inside near cool GB from Canada cool for little. Doc, you're welcome. Near question also, you can put it to Seku, and I think we have to talk in Mandinga now, and it's, because a lot of people are texting me. Seku, I think you're comfortable with it, right?
Yes, yes.
All right, so
all right, thank you very much. For and say who I took time to read through who Seiko is. Back then I listened to a few interviews of yours. I realized, partly you went to school in Gambia, relocated to the United States, run a business in the Gambia, and of course now politics, and all of these things in a way or another are cross-cutting, because for a viable business environment there needs to be political stability, of course, to uplift a society where some people are either up there or you are rock bottom. There is no in between. And of course, like you already mentioned, poverty is very prevalent in the Gambia, and incumbents often use this to their advantage. Either they tell you we have scholarships for, people based on party affiliation, or we have funding for women based on party affiliations. How do you intend to actually build a system that is built on subjugating the people and using, state resources to entice them for votes going into 2026?
Yes. I mean, near Gambia to be signed and cool Kenya is absurd. Because near Jibe, Jameno la nyando lem puruka jare Kenya soro, puruka good education soro. It shouldn't be partisan. Like, hey, nyanda katara PPP, puruka scholarship soro. That's nonsense, Even the good roads we complain about, electricity, nyando, that's why I'm a cartel dealer, we are there to represent all Gambia. So that needs to change, and that mentality, and Gambia from Manyanako Sifa accept. So what not matter back in Tolfana political Kenya Kamol, put Kamol Kalamutandi, like, hey, Nina Milanyan, this is your right. Like, for example, I'm running under the PPP banner today. The PPP becomes a ruling party. You vote, if West Coast region votes for me or not, it's an obligation for me to fix that road, create good institutions. So, Tolfana said, volume more sensitize, more currently, let people know what their rights are. And this is what we're doing. By 2099, saya sort of follow, but we are doing the needful. We are going to different communities, Farado, Poholo, Singe, Super Finance Scholarship. There's a lot of things we make taken behind the scenes, camera, whole things in the phone. Because I feel like, volume quote coming to the solar means more soft and you don't have to be, a ruling party to do that. We're doing that from out of pocket. Then go take because we love Gambia. It's love for country. That's all.
Yo nanyin kar fula nyong ba kala mente ngalong ibora sukuta sabi jele sabi jin kolo keda munti mini along ko farmansa da ni nata Gambia la tari koto para sabi ji fanan keda sade de mi along ka barara ni nata Gambia la kolto moso masa kunda ke barol yo abewolo kono ni nata je wati dantan komantro nata ka molla kordalo boy min ya lon ko dolbe je wolmo wol kela keta bankol lati dolbe wol kono musolla min ya lon ko wol ka aisil la waf just to build a little house to actually provide for their families. But a secunda probably lack of policy foresight. That a fuck up dum wala dulal kela dulal boy keke biolti fangola sate kono keke dinkaran tangolti displacement of people in those neighborhoods. Before we get to the Gambia as a whole, in your own community, you've seen how people have been subjugated, marginalized, and even displaced in their own community on lands that actually belongs to them. Land reforms are major issues in the Gambia, more so land use, related issues. How does the government under your leadership look into matters related to land and land acquisitions in the Gambia?
Yeah, what Laku matter back is a very sensitive topic. What now within the 400 days, the land leadership they make a reform. We need a complete overhaul of the system, land reform, a thorough economy, constitutional reforms. And I feel like in terms of this land allocation, the problem we keep running into is because man system will digitize. So and if you look at the process today, it's very complicated, and Gambia is a very small country. We are running out of land. It's becoming land is a big asset for every Gambian. So when it comes to land reform, I think we should be fair. We need to putting a strong judiciary system in Bamban, and it should be fair and it should be non-partisan. Once we have a strong judiciary, a lot of this issue means sort of thing, because when you look at the judiciary in Gambia, this includes the police, the judges, Supreme Court, these are all under judiciary. And right now, these bodies, the Mantara operate in an independent way because they can easily resolve some of these issues by so we need to find ways, to be transparent, to be fair to the original owners of the land, and bring everything to the table. And I feel like compensation needs to happen. Because imagine internal land sort of don't have the same land cycle, and you're like sort of from the Ministry of Land. So sometimes you can impose from farm. How is it possible the original person, me a land sort of, but then somebody else is coming to get the same paperwork? It just doesn't make sense. So there's a huge lapse there. There's a gap there that needs to be filled. So digitization is very important, and then judicial reform needs to happen in Gambia. So that way, we have strong institutions. There should be a way to, like even in America, you can go to your local county and just search, put my name and see, what properties that I have. These are public information, right? So I think we need, those kind of systems in the Gambia to avoid, this chaotic and to avoid mess, and yeah, the new Sifa can open Bangkok and back, even to the citizens, people lose more particular there, because it's like, hey, my investment is not investment man in bank. Because even the citizens will lose that trust in leadership. So those are areas we need to, we definitely need to reform. Investors do, they lack there's lack of credibility in the system. That's what I'm trying to say.
They lack trust. They lack trust. They don't have trust in our system.
Yeah, exactly.
If I should put a follow up on that, I am with the belief that you have also a military background. For instance, Gambia, for 8-9 years, abuko abinasanji tansila ntolube bantala soja rolla mara lolo kota na banko kam the economic forces, even though Kelemantra ndolla banko kam. But of course, a system that probably was instituted by the former regime, was built on militarization, and the people fear the army at the time. But a new system that came in place for almost 9 years, almost getting to its 10th year, and still cannot, build the trust of our national security, operatives, and it is entirely dependent on foreign forces. Molbe molfale la doku dulal to Gambia, la kordalo kono, silolo kang. Security is of great importance in any governance structure. But of course, that is not what we are seeing in today's Gambia. What do you think? Where exactly are we getting it wrong? And what would you do to actually change that narrative?
Yeah, and To be honest, I'm all for Gambia, and I think it's a big security risk for Kaluntam sort of, within our paramilitary. I'm not even saying military, even paramilitary. Um, so we need a strong leadership from the top. A strong leadership that can instill discipline, soldier of police role. Because it's been 9 years, that's more than enough time, pro program funds to military sort of, because this is a big security risk. We have, Senegalese military, Mansa protest, that doesn't make sense. 9 years is more than enough time, And like I said, the leadership credibility needs to come from the top. New motor rec, we're going to keep running into a situation like this because, from my understanding, Hanisan economic forces with Gambia. Gambia has been peaceful for the most part. So why Hanisan, and it's cost, it's not free, man. Gambia would also contribute to paying those salary. So that's I feel like that's a waste. Okoro Minjo or whatever is costing Gambia to have economic forces. So Okoro use no commercial kendo lo karamodo lopitan kendo lo supplies. A lot of hospitals lack good equipment and supplies. So these are some of the tough questions. Leadership Nyandaka, transparent and make sure we put in our resources into the right places. 9 years is more than enough time. The thing is, yes, went from military to a democratic regime, and there's freedom, but we need sense of urgency in terms of nation building. We need credible leadership. Leadership me along a large form, they're ready for change. Leadership me along, they're going to empower Gambians. Gambian don't want to be military economy. These people are fully capable. They just need to be well trained. They need to be inspired by their leadership. So that is what is missing today. So Nintol Fananaka with my military background, for me, I see serving in the military as service, discipline, and giving back to the community. So woman Kutol, Dolfana left a soldier on maybe down, they should put Gambia first, on that same structure in the and I was saying that in a different platform. We also need to have corps of engineers, in our military. So if I name construction, what was it, or even building roads, I'm under a foreign contract for Tabanda. We can save that money by training our own, National Guard troops or Army or Navy to do that job. And then that's a skill set me along honey bottom military. They can create their own private companies because they already have the skills in construction, in building, and even in technology. But into the military they don't have those skills, honey bottom military, to transition into civilian life. So those are all the gaps in Alongo. I think Gambia be to we come up with a different mindset. We'll go for funding.
Again, as probably I would categorize you within the young people cadre. We've seen na funding ke jama jamini along ko jikala teta nyumbanko kam America ning Gambia fatata bakele Gambia lombanko temi along ko do ko koleata mo jama do ko soto koleata amanke karango dronti dolsa karanno le dolsa skills dolsa no bara pour ka do ko so mi along ko beta sutura la yela dimbal sutura hani salary scales sul fam mom betea o nyama funding ke jama fele fata nyumba ko silo kam anu nyina mo kula de mi yalan ko masa kundal men be soto rim fam ka downplay fo ka fo mole ko ika parents all blame for people deciding to go dol be je parents all ka kalam tala dol be je parents all ka fonle but dol be je parents all buka long fereng fereng what exactly would be a measure to tackle this, I wouldn't call it illegal migration, but this mass migration to Western countries. Because migration over Kenya, many Katanin Komashilo is just one. But a dolbe sort of infana many alonko, they either go through scholarships and they don't come back home.
No, sa intol lafta minna sa is purka opportunity create in Gambia Banco. Ibadi la Gambia Banco doing all the sila jang, ibe la opportunity sort of jang, ibe dokupendo sort of jang, they can live here in dignity. So some of the few things main sort of na agenda kono wala mta senola fanala purka jay bambandi when it comes to farming, because near farming today you can create so many jobs from farming, right? But the Lamole camera, farming is like, fuaro like a farming, and which is not true. So we need to debunk that narrative immediately. And sign a farming financial to boost productivity and in technology like that. Even AI can be used in farming. Drone technology, so they use no farming. So we need to show them modern farming techniques and, get more young people to get into farming. And from farming for now, you can create jobs through value creation. When you process these raw materials into goods, through value creation, you can implement them often and create world economy. So we need to focus on how we can process our granules to granite oil, and even livestock feed. From granules, we can do so much with granules. So Nyantaka focus on call it an agro-industrialization. From granules, we can process granite oil. Even sunflower seeds, we can get oil from that. Even coconuts make BJL. So through processing and value creation, say job Jama creates. Okay, you can also argue, Dol Malafika agriculture, they went to school, Dol the construction industrial economy, right? But because do possible. This is where the government can create a program like TAF World Sifa. TAF is a global brand. Abe Gambia, Abe Sierra Leone, Abe Nigeria, Fernando, governments need to have forces, even global properties and this big real estate company. How can we give them tax break free and funding can absorb? You do hold the because Mojama Kata school, you make up but you can do possible. Every day you can magically you have back with. So saying how can we partner with these industries like that, which is a global brand? Give them incentives, tax breaks, even wage taxes for them, hey, the more make a G youth set employ 2,000-3,000 of them per year. We give you, 50-60% tax break. The budget of funding kill for do. Kendo total number two, the hands-on experience total on the job. In the next 5 years, it will find they'll become entrepreneurs. It will find they can set up their own and hire more Gambians. So these are some of the strategies, government can communicate to make sure funding here will do cool, and also we can look at foreign direct investment. Me alone, Gambians can benefit from it. It has to be mutually beneficial. But one thing I noticed, most of this foreign direct investment, and there's no knowledge transfer. Ni parita like millions make Gambia jam, ni wo londo ni femol bekata. So we come back at square zero. So a lot of these, contracts, deals, they need to be restructured in a way, handing a foreign company with jam, they can become self-sustainable. They can learn, there's knowledge transfer, and even building all these infrastructures, especially support, maintenance, and sustainability incorporated into these deals. So these are some of the areas. When it comes to technology, also, fintech is on the rise. I'm glad way for Nata Gambia Bangkok and you have APS, Yona, Philip Yona is Gambian owned. So now it's good to have Way, which is an international company, it's not Gambian owned. But Yona is Gambian owned, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So how can we empower Yona, to compete with international companies like Way? Because Nintekara Masati, is how we can empower Gambian companies. Because tell how much how can Yona also expand into other countries like Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast. So Ntolwa Miranya Nyandaka Kraten. So Gambian companies will scale beyond the shores of Gambia. And here River Gambia to be, it can be the economic backbone of Gambia. From River Gambia, we can create artificial canals, put irrigation system of trade, to different regions in the Gambia, right? And then we can have good network, even rails, River Gambia can just be strategic. That time that River Gambia do, right? I'm telling you, River Gambia alone, as a Gambia, Mandela government will fight. And we can even create energy from River Gambia, through we can do small scale hydrokinetic turbine energy that can generate electricity. So the potential is there, but in Dulal Bejibe, they are heavily underutilized. Why? I don't know. So our priorities are very misplaced. So there's so much opportunities in Gambia. River Gambia alone can be a logistics hub for Gambia. We can have ports in River Gambia for each region. So they have buyers, they have cold storage along River Gambia. From there, transportation system, good road network and infrastructure, Samba factory, you have processed it. And then from there, you have the Atlantic Ocean. We can ship out easily, we become a nation of export. So all these gaps are missing today. So we come up with a different mindset on how we can diversify in our economy. So that way we're not just dependent on not as a cash crop. There's so many cash crops, they can grow in Gambia. Even cotton, Nenda can function textile industries in Bangkok. We can grow cotton here. So that way we can have a whole garment industry. We can do weaving. All this will create jobs for the women. So nina agenda jibe when it comes to furniture musul be segmento be explain this is how we can have a strong economy. We can go from import to export, more foreign exchange, and then tourism. Again, tourism is another industry is heavily, the potential is there, but we're not using it. Right? Nimor Naja is mostly beach tourism. Outside of beach tourism, there's nothing else. So I don't know how we can boost cultural tourism, even ecotourism. Gambia have about 4 to 5 beautiful islands. Me and Uncle, more than decades. When Ilunta will not much to look forward to, through ecotourism. River alone can be a tourism hotspot, along the whole of River Gambia. So again, the River Gambia can transform this country very easily, even without touching other areas. So I know, I guess, very
you
rough
get
when I
you
speak
get
about things
excited
like this.
when you
Yeah,
you
but
get excited when you talk about.
there's so much that can be done that is not done. I don't know why. And then, if you look at how we operate today, all we do is go beg outside for loans, go beg outside for loans. And Gambia, the debt to revenue ratio today is 5 to 1. It's not sustainable. So we need to be more clever. We need to, we need more intellectuals. What I'm talking about, hey, even me, or PPP, or Golden Era, don't that matter Gambia fixed dollar. We don't have all the answers. We need more intellectuals to come on board, and we brainstorm. We create a strategy for Gambia bonding in Bata. It's I feel like Bata Gambia Bata is just it's like it's easy for carbon among Korea. With visionary leadership and intentional building, we can do it. We
Yeah,
just have to have a good game plan, a roadmap. Me
yeah,
alone is feasible. So I'll stop there. But
yeah.
there's so much I can talk about all day long. But let me stop.
Just before Dog Button, then Ngarula, I mean, when you started talking about the potential of Gambia, you become exciting. We can see that and then we can relate it. This is not a rocket science. These are some of the things that are actually available in our country. Nimu nema fe already. And a dog mo molde me alnoko I learned those of the natural resources management. But I know right now sometimes it's so frustrating. You see all these potentials that your country can do to remove their own people from object poverty, and better still we are wangulin kabinaje id card project id card contract when you the Ghanaian or wala Nigerian to produce id card for the Gambia. It really touched my heart. We got Gambians minanoko, they can do that in the Gambia there, even in diaspora minanoko, they can bid contract. Yeah, airport for jibe something thing ika masingol me use here foreign country, they are totally in control of the airport operations. And there is no country in the world whereby Bitalaje, you have other foreign countries, like an airport on your own. Security wise, it is not even intelligent. But I will when it comes to sport. Sport one of the investment that me and Noko Banco Banco, Kotanolka invest ye Kendeke for Kendeke. Pulka Jako, Kajua Samana Bankoka. Niara Jiben and neighbors in Senegal, Sadio Mane Kera Multimial Noko, his own community, he turned around his own community provided that by providing schools, hospitals, and then helping the communities to catch up with their feedings and their social well-being. Gambia, for far too long, we don't even have a single national stadium whereby boys will proudly go into the field. Purkajoko molefina and kefasa purkajoko bangosa manyato. Gambia failed to kata AFCON. They failed also to go to a World Cup. It doesn't mean that they don't have potential. They got potential. Minano case is Gambia dingol yana tibab du banko kan you play kan high level positions but be well body consider kan pour ka kata Senegal ka football play Senegal because ya jelo ko jele benefits to e kan na faso do wolto annum fana Senegal fana wala keda moldi mi an ko kila football ba ke makoy. So given all these contexts, what would be your position when it comes to your office? What would you do for the young people? They are very interested in sport.
Okay, one thing I'll make clear to you, Gambia, it's not like a Boca Grand sort of from FIFA or AFCON, right? That the African used to be called FIFA, I believe now it's AFCON. FIFA, AFCON, Gambia grant minister is a lot. But in reality, it's because of mismanagement from the stadium of one complete follow. I don't have the exact numbers, so I won't quote. But through my research, Gambia in the last 5 years, the grant minister is in the millions of dollars. new filing to Laporola, at least by now. But again, mismanagement, you give contract to people, me alone, alone, table, if they call from somebody, instead of giving it to the right competent people to manage the project, right? So it's from the top, mismanagement, So Koro Fana do damage accountable, there's no accountability, transparency Fana Malafa. Like I said, the only way we can get rid of this nonsense is, through reforms, accountability. Koro Kadunda should be, there should be a forum, even you can go online and see, okay, this is how much, who won the contract, just high level, because Nakuro, Kadunda Mentor, we should know. It's every, all taxpaying Gambians should know. Without, we need strong laws to fight corruption and mismanagement. Without that, it's the same cycle. So what I've learned is very important in reform, constitutional reform. We have strong institutions. Even the people will have hope that yes, time coming on palatable for them. They want to be they have leadership and accountable to people. But without that, trust me, more without these reforms, it's going to be the same nightmare. Even our procurement system in Kenya, the bidding, this is totally absurd. Checks and imbalance today. And number three, I feel like must have too much executive power. So, it's like a king. They have absolute power. So we need checks and balances. Like for example, Dr. Malmo is intelligent. Now, Nabala Dopo, let's say for example, he's working as the Ministry of Minister of Agriculture. All that needs to be performance based. Nabala Dopo Keka Anyama, the president cannot just reassign or remove him from that position unless maybe there's evidence of gross abuse or negligence or whatever the case is. But you have the Nintomo system also, the government can just do the president or whoever has the executive power can allow, we've seen that with the Auditor General, but we don't have that performance-based metrics. So we need to think outside of the box. Let's have performance-based metrics with KPIs. And as long as the doctor about and even the president cannot remove it because it's good, it's delivering every year, he's exceeding his target. So what now, we need a refresh, a whole system over. The way we do things, business as usual today is nonsense. Take some balance, and I feel like, Matapuna Fundamental, the executive manager can more appoint just through executive orders. There should be checks and balances, Hey, I know you're great at engineering, you're a good fit for the job, but maybe we should go through congressional hearing, hey, even the Congress approved. We have to, even in America, they have that system. You have to go through that congressional hearing. Although, hey, you can do the job, you are well qualified, but to make it fair, to the other people, because maybe it could be nepotism, maybe you're my brother or you're my cousin, so again, transparency needs to be the norm of the day and accountability. And then we need checks and balances. So I'm telling you, it doesn't matter who is there, it's going to be the same thing over and over. So we need to do the needful through bold reforms, and hold people accountable. That's the only way to happen.
Yeah, Doc, if you have an additional question, because Sek wanted to go to somewhere today.
Okay, you just mentioned transparency and accountability. I'll just give you snippets of what is happening in the Gambia, honestly. Now, this is a regime that was supposed to be there for 3 years. They neglected those facts and, of course, neglected all the reform agendas. Now they're talking about 15 years. Now they're talking about giving women loan schemes. And these loan schemes, we know the scheme that is used in government is the major funders of the regime who are the biggest winners of the government contracts are the same people injecting their monies or kickbacks into the political party of the regime. And these monies are used to entice women and, of course, students to tell them we are going to give you scholarship. And basically, I refer to it as voter inducement. Now, again, when we talk about corruption, is highly pronounced in the government of the Gambia. And when you talk about reforms to make sure that all these systems are corrected, that cuts across both the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. What system of governance should we expect from your leadership? If you become president in 2026.
Yes, great question. Very intelligent question. We need to start from the executive branch. Like I said, that absolute power, it needs to go. There should be checks and balances. And, there are some things me and Uncle, even the president should just be able to just do it without going through MPs, the members of parliament, right? So, which is the legislative branch, they make the laws. This is what I'm suggesting, right? So, if the legislative branch, they deliberate, they push back on the president, right? The president for now, hey, these people are challenging me, but yeah, like veto power, so we can veto it. So, if we get into a stalemate, let's have a national referendum. The national referendum gives the Gambian people the ability to have a say. And then if we have that 50% plus one, what the majority of Gambians want, we do. But we need to have that checks and balances where, hey, the legislative branch don't get along with the executive, let it go to national referendum. That's what we call true democracy. It's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So we should put laws near along for the people, you know, uh, the people want. It shouldn't be something we impose on them because we are serving them. And then we need strong judiciary that are non-partisan. They just there to do their job and standalone judiciary, from the Supreme Court to the police, the uniform, the security personnel. So once we don't have this in place or within the constitution, we have weak enforcement. It's the same cycle. Trust me. It doesn't because here's the thing, once you have that power, you can become something else. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. People do change, people move forward, they will tell you, but sometimes that power and then the people surround you, they tempt you to use that power in a negative way. And like they said, the true test of power is not how you benefit from people, how you use it to benefit others. So this is, we need strong leaders that can think, that are selfless, that care for the people, and they know they're there to serve Gambians. They're not there. It's not a self-enrichment program. It's not. We need selfless people, basically. Most of
Yeah.
the people
So,
I'm seeing in our government today are
Doc,
from every day. They're there to serve their own interests
I
instead of taking
I
the people.
I have this final question. We know Gambia, of course, we have a multi-party system, but it's a simple majority system, and incumbents often have the edge over oppositions if they're fragmented. Do you think there is a necessity to actually bring all the oppositions together to actually, face off with the incumbent to bring about that meaningful change that you will collectively build the reform agendas that this country needs going forward? All these parties could actually feel that there is free and fair, and of course, functional democracy in this country compared to the neglected promises by the regime currently.
Yeah, coming up on Yammer, this is for a necessity. Parallel should be mandatory today. Anybody that is serious about broadening administration bondage, we come together. It's mandatory, and I feel like anybody that supports whoever, Waweka, PPP, Tilembang, or any other existing party, let the people force them to form a coalition. I'm willing to have that conversation with anybody. Kabarito from another political corner, we're a brand new face, Mongkong Wara, Ntara, Honorable Halifa Sallah, the likes of Dabo, Fatmata Trambajang, and other people but we should definitely come together. I think it's a must because we have no choice. Because there's so many ways to rig the election here in Gambia. So many ways. And we all know that. But if we come out, as one single entity and as a force, we can change the narrative. So I don't see it as a necessity. We all need it to happen. And I'm happy. My doors are open. If they're serious about it. But the thing, I always tell people, mistakenly me most, I wasn't part of the 2016 coalition. 10 years ago, I wasn't even thinking politics. I was never, being a politician even is totally different from my mindset, 2, 3 years ago or 5 years ago. The Kabiriminak and Gambia is to establish businesses, change how people think of Africa, build great institutions that we can be proud of even as Gambians. But I shifted to politics because now they go, yeah, we need to set the bar high. We need to let people know, hey, we can have divergent opinions. We can disagree to agree with certain things. We need to have a common denominator, and we can do that, by having intellectual, mutually respectful communication. So with coalitions, different groups, even movements, you don't even have to be a party. You can be a movement, as long as your purpose is proka Gambia Bondi Petrokono, the Bahamian Kono, Musol Bekum, Minkum Bola, funding the Fakam Back. If you care about any of those things, my brother, let's put everything on the side. Let's work together. And I'm happy to be part of that. It doesn't matter who lead. I could care less. This is not a do or die for me. I don't care. Let's just have the right people, the right mindset. But one thing I would always reemphasize, mistake will be more so the last time because coalition like 10 years ago. But look, we're here today discussing the same nonsense. Let's go back. Natonya Punyo this time. What were the root causes of the last coalition? How can we make sure those nonsense doesn't happen together, regardless of who becomes the face of the coalition? Once we can put that on the table, let's move forward, and all this nonsense will stop, and then we can bring our forces together. This is where I stand, and this is where I will stand tomorrow or the day after. Nothing will change from that.
Mr. Sao, we've agreed that we're gonna have 40 minutes of your
Yes,
time
I
to
have,
this
I
program.
have a picture of that.
So I have a couple of questions that I want to put it to you.
Okay.
Ikoya politician Jamal visit Nimbango Kang. So Gambia politician will me kafundi nyakam. Among them, who inspires you? Who is your favorite politician?
That's a hard one. The favorite?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a tough question. I love all of them. No, because the thing is, like for example, Honorable Khalifa Salah, Honorable Dabo, they've sacrificed a lot for this country. Even Honorable Tamajan as a lady, last coalition I effort in India. I admire them so much. I wouldn't say I have a one favorite, honestly, because you be like they've done for Ghana, they've sacrificed. You know, people said a lot of things to them, but they still persevered. And then B, they're fighting for a better Gambia. So they've all contributed immensely in so many ways, and I respect them. I read their biographies even before meeting them in person.
A lot
Of
of
course, I'm here in Gambia. I see things they do on the ground. So I don't have a favorite, but I love all of them equally.
but a lot of Gambians are looking up to you. So many young Gambians, a lot of them. After the election, we are going to the parliamentary election and area council election. Are you willing to sponsor a rally behind your young candidates to put forward to represent the Gambia at the parliament or local
Yes,
government?
yes, of course, of course, of course. We want more intellectuals to come into politics. They shouldn't shy away because this is the problem that our main face can be. The decision makers, a lot of them are not, the young people. So once we have more young people within politics, of course they're going to represent their constituents. Coming out from Yamenuto, right? If you look at Gambia today, like for example, Sukuta, Bunjul, Food, and all these towns, we want all these towns to be fully autonomous. You live in Jersey. If you look at the area you live in, each of these small town city, they have something they are proud of. They have factories there. They don't have to go outside of that town. They can have jobs there. So ntol fana miranya sifa fana lebentol block. Sukuta should have, maybe a factory that can employ 3,000 people. I'm under the Sukuta demand for it, but they can have jobs there. The same for Punjab, the same for these other areas. You know what's going to happen once we have that kind of mindset and institutions in place? Say, Molbe Karamotala seriously, we can make run. So say when opportunities or mega projects come, the government will say, hey, we need to tender this bid to Sukuta because if you like the Karanal Theatre, we need more people that study plumbing. In Sukuta have more than 1,000 plumbers from that one factory that was there, right? So it makes sense for Sukuta to get that contract. It's fair. So if you're in Gunju, what would I tell you? Hey, so that way they don't miss out on this opportunity. And this should be decentralized, even in Central River, Lower River, Nyomi, all North Bank, Parafenia, Paribu, all
No.
yeah, they need to compete in healthy competition. Let the statistics speak for itself.
Would
So
you?
this is how we need to operate as a country. And we can attain it, but we need to set that paradigm so that
My
way
last
other small cities and towns can emulate from other people.
my last question before I allow Malmo to make a last statement. Doc, Mr. Sao, if President Barrow happens to win 2026 election, would you consider joining his government to serve as a minister?
No, 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 I won't. I won't.
Would you
Never, never,
consider?
never. And the reason why is I don't know Mr. President Barrow. I've never met him in person. I see him on TV just like me and you, but they haven't shown Gambian people. They haven't proven themselves. They have 10 years to do it. 10 years is more than enough time. They have, even fighting corruption. If you look at his inner circle, he's appointing the same old people. So you can tell they're not ready for change. They just want to keep looting and embezzle it. If he's truly ready for change, all these reforms we're talking today, it could have been done even 5 years ago, but they've been delaying, and all this delay is strategic. They don't want it to happen, So unless he's serious, he wants to fight corruption, he wants to put people around him that are serious to change Gambia. 10 years is more than enough time to, even 1 year is more than enough time to have great minds around you. See, it doesn't take 10 years. Look at Patrice Talon of Benin. At the same time as Barrow, within 10 years. You would think in Europe today, it's among one of the cleanest cities, Now they produce their own cotton, they have garment factory. And Benin is 10 times bigger than Gambia. It's 110,000 square kilometers. Gambia is only 11,000 square kilometers. So if a bigger country like Benin, 10 times bigger than Gambia, can do these reforms, can have a thriving garment and textile industry, why not Gambia? So again, the excuses just doesn't add up. And for me, it's not about the money. I'm doing well by myself. I thank God for that. But I cannot just align myself with somebody that is on the opposite end. We don't align on so many things. It's not going to work out. At the work.
Doc, your last question or final remark?
Thank you very much, Mr. Saho. I don't have a final question, but I just want to make this comment. I'm a strong believer that politics is not a gain for you, because I've read extensively a little about you. I understand this is a very progressive and, of course, a successful, a young individual who could strive and do way better for himself with or without politics. So you're very different from any other person who will join Barrow, because dole kana politiko kono la mimbe tolieje. But near from no became mira mimbe teje is about what you can do for the society and the community where you hail from. Of course, leaving the Gambia to America, understanding how it is, understanding the global dynamics, and then getting to see how a country is going, and having the mentality that, of course, we should be able to come together to see how we shape or better or change the narratives of this country speaks more about your humility, and being very compassionate, and, of course, loving that country. And that's basically how patriots behave. When I look at you, for me, it's mostly about how down to earth you are and how you communicate to the people with very soft tone, and, of course, talk on matters that are relevant to our national discourse. So that's just one thing that we, the people within the combo ends, are very proud of. And joining politics for me is not mostly just the political gains, but how much you influence society, and, of course, younger people to understand that, of course, you can be another's, say Husaho. You can work hard. You can come from Gambia and then do one thing or another, or have a very progressive career. So sometimes politicians don't see the impact they do, behind the scenes, or within the political spectrum. But just to mention that, a lot of people read a lot about you. A lot of people are inspired by your story, and, of course, a lot of people are looking forward to a government in the Gambia, probably led by Sehu, of course, that which Sehu is a key member of, for the collective good of the Gambia and the Gambian people. So I thank you very much for having this conversation. And
Okay.
we're very, very proud of you. Brufut Sabiji Ninkunjuru Nyorintolobe Killing. At the end of the day, when you see
That's
one of us getting into not just politics, but, of course, making impact within society, is something that we must commend and appreciate. And we're very much appreciative of the efforts. And, of course, Ibe Kataku Kendall Minkekang Nayato, because you could have said in America, you could have done business elsewhere, you could have gone anywhere. But, of course, Gambia, with a very small economy, is quite striving, but it still went in there to invest, which is quite very, very patriotic of a young Gambian to do. So we're very much appreciative of all of that. And I wish you very well in the political
Thank you.
arena, and as well anything that has to do with the Gambia.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate the support. I appreciate the
Sep,
time.
if you have last statement that you want to make, we will release you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I have it 6 o'clock. I'm already running late, but I want to thank both of you. This is a great platform. Yeah, you both are very intelligent Gambians, and my only appeal to our fellow Gambians is, please do not sit on the sidelines and then complain. Let's not point fingers at nobody. Let's take ownership. Let's take accountability. Let's dissect what we can accept as a nation and what we cannot accept, and then strive to make changes. So that way we can, we can have a Gambia we are all proud of. We can have a Gambia that our kids, our grandkids can also be proud of. Like, wow, our grandparents made that sacrifice. They took that bold step. So this is how, this is the mindset. This is the wave wavelength we need to be on. So I would like to thank you both and your audience as well. Thanks for having me on your platform.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Sao.